Hey everybody, this is Bridgette D. I am so excited for you guys to be with me today. I'm here on my show. Welcome, welcome. We're gonna take a couple of minutes for you guys to come on in. Come on in, come on in. Tell your friends that we are live on Facebook with the Purpose Party with Bridgette D, and that is me. I'm excited for you guys to be here. Come on, go get your family, your friends, your mama and them, all them. And let's see what's going on. What's going on?
Hi, everybody.
Hopefully, you guys can see me. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. All right, all right, all right. Like I said, I'm excited about being here today. I am here with my phenomenal guest. Now, listen, she is not only is she pretty, and you know that happened because her mama and her daddy and her grandmama and all those people that helped get her to here to be. She is my niece. She is wonderful, and we're going to be talking to her today. But first of all, let me just say while you guys are coming in, listen, this is what I want you guys to know. I am excited. I am appreciative of all of you guys who said to me, um, we hope that you're well, that you guys were encouraging and praying for me as I had
Pick
my
up the signal in the
accident.
kitchen and come back.
And I'm doing so much better. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for praying for me. You guys are my prayer warriors. You guys are my
Put the host up and share.
and you guys were praying for me, and you guys did your thing because God heard you, and He's healing me. And as I said last night when I was doing this test, um, as I am a little bit older than I was yesterday, then it takes me just a little bit longer to heal. But I'm trying to walk, y'all. I'm trying to get back in the meals, okay? But you guys were great, and I'm excited. Hey, Ty, I'm gonna say hi to a few people that I see are on. You guys share this video. I think that this is going to be so informative of what's going on today, especially if you guys are dealing with this COVID thing, this
In
COVID-19
and out.
coronavirus, and for the homies, the Rona, and all the things that it's allowing to happen and the changes that it's allowing to happen. Can you hear me, first of all? Let me see if you guys can hear me. Ty, if you could let me know if you can hear me. So glad you're feeling better. Thank you, Ty. Ty, let me know if you can hear me, honey. Just put in there, yes, I can hear you. That'll make me feel better. If not, I'll be feeling like I'm doing sign language. So, anyway, I know that you can because this thing is going to work because I paid so much for this new webcam. So, it's going to work. Yes, it is. So, anyway, so listen, as you guys are coming in, I want you guys to get your questions together. If you have any questions that you've ever wanted to ask um, about the coronavirus or COVID-19 or anything like that, because after we get to asking some of the questions that I already have pre-planned, if I did not get to a question that you've always wanted to ask, then we're going to open it up for questioning. Okay, so um, think about it. If you're like, well, I don't really know, or write it down, and if for any reason I cover it, then scratch it out and got something else, and something matter of fact that we go through or something that we talk about may end up triggering a whole nother question. So I want you guys to participate here. Don't just be spectators, please. I want you guys to participate and help me to interview because right now we are dealing with this thing and we're going to make sure that we get as much knowledge as possible. Now, let me just say this before I introduce my beautiful guest. Um, the information that you hear today on the show, now listen, we're not trying to sway anybody. I just want you to know that. I want you to just listen, take the information in. If it is something that you have heard and you don't agree with it, that's fine. You just take this information and you can take it and add it to anything you've already heard. You can go research it and end up doing what you want to do. So I want to put that disclaimer in there that we're going to be discussing some things. Amber is someone in the medical field, and so this is information that she is researching. She's going to give you her references on the information that she's giving out, where she got it from, and all of that, so that you can go look it up too. It's just like when it comes to the word, you got to study to show yourself approved yourself in the word of God. So I want you to study and show yourself approved in this world too. So you can read up on that. Now listen, I'm excited. Let's get to it, honey. This beautiful lady to the side of me, don't we look alike? Yes, that cute
Can you
runs in
hear
our
me?
family. To do, honey, that cute runs in our family, honey. It runs. And so you'll understand because she is my niece. But let me give you a little bit. This is Mrs. Amber Singletary. Say hi, Amber.
Hey, y'all. Can you hear me okay?
Everybody can hear. Listen, make sure you can hear Amber too. Okay, so say hi, and they can hear me good, 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 good. So listen, let me do this. Not only is she beautiful, and she is my niece, which right there qualifies her to say anything I ask her to do. But we're going to we're going to talk about her credentials first of all. So Amber Singletary, let me just put it down. She's been a physician's assistant for 20 years now, and she has a bachelor's degree in health professional education. She's a former physician's assistant professor at Western University of Health and Sciences in Pomona. And she's also, for all of us there who are sorors, she is at the Delta Theta soror.
Delta
Right?
Sigma Theta.
Delta Theta, put up your sign. Go ahead. Okay, don't put your sign up. Yes, 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 yes. What's y'all chant when you meet another
Ooh,
soror? What is it?
ooh.
Okay.
You can't say that though.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I take it back. Ooh, I took it back. I did it backwards. Okay, so I don't qualify, but it's okay. But anyway, and she's a mother of two beautiful children, and she's the wife of our pastor, Alaric Singletary of Wind of the Spirit Church out in Riverside too. So we're going to be talking about this COVID thing. I'm going to be asking her some questions that we've written down, and we're going to get some clarity on it. Now, listen, this is going to be casual, but we're going to be factual. So I'm just going to be talking and asking some questions that I wrote down, but it may trigger some other questions, so I may have to go off script. But right now, we're going to ask her a couple of questions. So let's start. Hopefully, you guys are ready. But all right, Amber, let's start this thing out. Is there anything first you want to say about anything? Did any credentials I left out, or anything else you want to say, or maybe you want to say hi to your congregants? I know that they should be.
I see a few people have joined us, so thank you for watching. I just want this to be an informal presentation. I don't want it to be too technical, too formal. Forgive me if I get too technical, just kind of dial me down, bring me back in. But the hope really is just to have an informal conversation, a candid conversation, share with you guys some recent information. As we all know, things related to COVID-19 are rapidly developing. And so part of my job clinically as a clinician working in urgent care, definitely on the front lines of this pandemic right now, I just want to share some things that I've learned, but also some things that I've researched and hopefully help just paint a different perspective than what's been promoted largely. Again, my point is not to talk about politics. I don't intend to tell you how to think. I just want to present more information for you so that you can draw your own conclusions and hopefully just with that information be a little bit more at ease with this disease we know now as COVID-19.
Good. Exactly, guys. So let's just get to talking. One of the reasons why I did this show is because a lot of times we are discussing things kind of silently and with people that don't necessarily. We're just comparing our. I guess not. We're not amateurs, but we just not as informed, and so we're having those kind of conversations, and we really don't have anybody to run it by, or we're getting some of our information off of the news, and sometimes the way that it is portrayed, it comes on with breaking news, and so it creates fear. And when people are afraid, they can't really listen thoroughly. They are more in panic mode, and so they really can't weigh things out. They're in reactionary before they are researching. So well, this is that quiet time. We're quieting the noise, and we're just going to be talking about this particular thing. So hopefully it helps you. I thought it would be something great that I would like to do. So hopefully you guys do too. All right, let's start this thing off. Okay, Amber.
Yes.
So what is COVID-19?
Woo! I feel like saying Mufasa. No, I'm playing.
COVID. Ooh.
COVID. So COVID-19 is, as many of you are probably familiar with now, it's basically a coronavirus, which is a type of respiratory virus or a virus that can impact the lungs largely. But it's the virus that is causing the COVID disease. So this coronavirus is one of the SARS coronaviruses. There are about 7 different types of coronaviruses out there that can impact humans, but coronaviruses in general are viruses that typically start with animals and can be transmitted to humans. There's some speculation that this all began at a seafood market from a snake in China. But we do know that these viruses can also be transmitted person to person. And so the coronavirus, COVID-19 that we're referring to is a SARS type of coronavirus, which is known to create severe acute respiratory syndrome. And that will create a whole cascade of symptoms, which we'll talk about a little bit more briefly. But in a nutshell, that's COVID-19.
Okay, so COVID is for corona.
Yes.
Obviously, virus, right?
Yes.
COVID, and then it was discovered in 2019.
Yes, you got it.
Okay, all right, so that's it. We start with the elementary, then we're going up to college. I needed to know that. All right, and you said, so from a snake, what happened to the birds? I thought it was a bird.
Well, the birds in the past created, the avian flu, and in the past, the pigs created the swine flu. So that's one of the ways that these viruses are getting labeled is if they have or when they identify the source of infection. But in this particular situation, they have just identified that it is a type of coronavirus that now can be transmitted person to person. And so that's what we're dealing with at this time.
Okay, so and how do you catch it?
So the COVID-19 specifically, again, being one type of coronavirus, basically is transmitted through respiratory droplets. So whether that comes from speaking, coughing, sneezing, touching a surface, perhaps where there are infected droplets, that is the way that someone can essentially be infected by the virus. You may be exposed to someone, but being exposed to someone is not synonymous with actually being infected with the virus. So that's what we're seeing right now. In terms of transmission, there's also a lot of recent media and a lot of scientific data that's coming out discussing concerns about, the droplets being aerosolized and remaining in the air. The thought is the heavier the droplet falls to the ground, you don't need to have as much distance or space between you and someone else, potentially who could carry the infection. But they're thinking now that smaller droplets can actually remain in the air for longer periods of time, thus creating the need to have more distance between you and someone else who could potentially be infected with this virus. So we're seeing studies now. Initially it was 6 feet of social distancing. Now there's some discussion of needing to be anywhere from 8 to 12 feet apart from someone who is infected, but not so much because I've walked past that individual, but if I've had prolonged contact with that person, 10 to 15 minutes of time, or very close contact for a prolonged period of time, those might be the ones who would be at greater risk of getting infected.
Okay, so let's put emphasis on, because we were talking about, they used to tell us, let's get our desks to be 6 feet apart, let's move this furniture in restaurants 6 feet apart. Then something came out and said, no, it's 8 foot apart, 8 feet apart. So let's clear up that. Is it 6? Is it 8? Do I step back? Do I measure and tell them, look at 2 more feet and we can talk about it?
I think at this point, the general consensus still remains at 6 feet. I think we have to stay tuned, for additional guidance or scientific consensus to become available. At this point, there again is speculation. There are studies that are suggestive. However, on a wide scale basis, right now we're sticking with 6 feet.
Okay, so 6 foot, we good, so we can talk. Okay. So and now, what are the symptoms of someone? Let's say if they don't know if they have it right now, per the research, what are the symptoms?
All right.
Someone should be concerned that they possibly could have COVID.
Right. Well, we know initially the kind of trifecta of symptoms that people were initially presenting with were fever, fever, cough, typically a dry cough, not producing any mucus production when you cough. Shortness of breath was also one of the initial main symptoms that we were seeing. However, that has since been expanded to include headache, fatigue, body aches, and now we're seeing people who have experienced a sudden new loss, or basically a new loss of taste or smell, as well as there are some who are also noticing what they're referring to as the COVID toes, which is kind of local inflammation on a toe or the foot that looks very vibrant and red. It's just a local inflammatory process. This is something else that we are seeing in patients. However, that particular sign does not correlate with how severe your infection could be. It's just another symptom that we're seeing a little bit more in relationship to people who have this virus. But the ones that we really need to pay attention to clearly are those respiratory findings, that dry cough, that shortness of breath, maybe even chest pressure or chest pain that is persistent or new would be very concerning right now.
So you know what? I haven't heard of the COVID toe.
Yeah, it's a symptom that you could see with other respiratory. It can manifest in other respiratory, illnesses. However, in this particular one, we're seeing a few more cases, but again, it's not as common as you would definitely be concerned about as it relates to those who might have shortness of breath, which is really, that's kind of the prime thing that's really unique to this particular virus and the way that it shows up in people's bodies.
Okay. And when someone has it, okay, here's the thing about that is there's people who I have allergies. So
right.
What is the difference between if someone had, allergies where we got a lot of pollen in the air, we got a lot of things going on, you know, and, we're sneezing, coughing just because of that. When at some point, I mean, well, I'll say this, when it comes down to going back to work, for some people have been working from home, and yet some in the procedures of people coming back into the building, they are saying that if they're coughing and sneezing and that kind of thing, that they're going to be sending them home.
Right.
What's the difference? I mean, and if someone says, no, I have allergies, so how would someone know the difference?
Right. That's a great question. It is a question that is very common. It's a question we're having to answer in the clinical setting as well every single day. That's what people essentially want to know. And at first glance, you would not necessarily know. But in terms of seasonal allergies, for those that suffer with seasonal allergies, typically there is the sneezing that goes along with that, something that we don't see really in a coronavirus patient at this particular point in time. Those persons with allergies may also have a runny nose, which is not a primary symptom of COVID-19, although there have been some that do show runny nose and sore throat, but those are not symptoms that are primary. The other thing too is how long the symptoms last and are there additional findings. In allergies, most people don't have a fever. However, with COVID-19, there's the presence of a fever. Again, allergies are not caused by viruses, so they show up in the body a completely different way. Also too, in terms of how long the symptoms last, your allergy symptoms may last, several weeks. Whereas even with COVID-19, the symptoms certainly can last up to 3 weeks, 25 days, I think is what they're saying now. So just the timing alone is not a good indicator. It's really more the symptoms. Again, someone who has COVID-19, they're going to, in most cases, look sick if they are symptomatic. Because if your lungs are inflamed and not processing oxygen well, you're not going to breathe well, and that's going to show up in a whole lot of different ways. And so allergies, no fever, mostly sneezing, runny nose, nasal congestion. Your common colds, there's fevers, sore throats, coughs, but typically no shortness of breath. In COVID-19, shortness of breath is one of the distinguishing features between allergies as well as the common cold. So that's how I would answer that question.
Okay. And I know that we have I mean, now we're in the summer, so of
Right,
course it's probably more about the allergies.
right.
But man, and hopefully, prayerfully, there will be a little bit more information when it comes down to the cure and all of that and what
Right.
can be done to help. But I know, yeah, I mean, what do you think about that? That's coming up on the cold and flu season. How, I mean,
Ooh.
your projections of how many, maybe not misdiagnosis, but a lot of people, the person feeling like, oh my God, instead of them saying, oh, it's just the flu, that they go, wow, I may have COVID. Do you
That's
think that?
that's a very tricky question. I can definitely tell you in the clinical arena, providers are definitely gearing up and trying to make preparations to address that very concern. I think it's going to be very difficult in the upcoming fall season, where we typically see flu kind of begin roughly the month of October and then begin to peak, somewhere around December, January. And so it's going to be very difficult to tell because patients are sick. The first thought is to go and seek treatment. How do you know someone has the flu versus COVID? Well, you have to have that initial patient encounter and then testing. Thankfully, we have the capacity to test for flu, which is very useful because we also have treatment for flu symptoms, which look very, very similar to the way in which coronavirus is showing up, especially in the early phase. Again, shortness of breath might be that one distinguishing feature between COVID-19 and influenza, which is caused by a completely different virus, by the way. And so clinically speaking, we cannot tell if someone has flu versus COVID without a clinical assessment or evaluation, and more specifically, testing. And so testing now has become available, a little more widely than we initially had. And again, we still have the capacity to test for flu. And even in my clinical situation, I saw people test positive for flu all the way through the early part of May. So a little bit of an atypical season, even this year with influenza.
Okay. Now you talked about treatment. What are we doing now when someone is, diagnosed? What are they doing at this point for treatment uh, for the virus?
Again, I wish there was a specific standard for treatment, but at this point in time, there is no standard protocol for treating patients with COVID-19. So if I had it, my grandmother had it, my child had it, all three of us would be managed differently on the basis of the way the signs and symptoms showed up in our bodies. Treatment with most viral illnesses are largely symptomatic and largely individualized. So it depends on who that person is. Does that person, are they considered healthy? Or are they someone who might be immune compromised, someone who has chronic diseases that might make it more difficult for their bodies to fight off, pending infection? And so the treatment is very much standardized. There are some investigational, there is one investigational drug that is available by emergency authorization. Remdesivir, there's been a lot of media attention about that medication, and there are some very favorable outcomes that we're seeing, but it has not been approved at this time for widespread usage. They're still learning about it. They typically, you would not release an investigational medication unless there was no other alternative and you were confronting a life-threatening disease. And this is the reason why the FDA has allowed early emergency use, requiring an authorization for that medication to be used in certain cases. It's not best for everyone, nor is it been declared a definitive treatment. So that medication may not work for everyone. There are strict protocols in place and criteria, which I'm not aware of the full scope of criteria, but there's a set specific criteria for individuals who would use that treatment. There are also some medications that have the ability to kind of modify the way our immune system works and responds to infection. That can be anything from steroids to the medication that's got a lot of attention, chloroquine / hydroxychloroquine. That is one of those types of medications. There are, symptomatic treatments, antibiotics such as azithromycin that has been used. And that's been used mostly to deal with some of the potential complications that are arising in this. One thing that I didn't say earlier is coronavirus being an acute respiratory syndrome it actually causes widespread, large amounts of inflammation in the lungs and the airways. And so you have a lot of inflammation. And so using medications that target that inflammation, as well as medications that target the virus from replicating and advancing in someone's body, you have to use multiple methods to manage someone's symptoms. And so that treatment largely is individualized, but there's no specific cure, no specific treatment for this disease at this time.
Okay. Now, who are those people that are at most risk for this?
Right. Those who would be considered at greatest risk are those who would ordinarily be considered immune compromised. Again, when your body comes against potential infection, a good, healthy, competent immune system has the ability to recognize it and generate a response to treat it or to fight it. So that way it doesn't overwhelm our bodies and cause significant illness or even death. However, persons who are immune compromised, these are individuals who get sick more easily, people who stay sick longer, people whose bodies are not well able or as able to fight off infection. And so that would be someone perhaps who already has existing lung disease. Maybe they have COPD, which is a chronic lung disease, emphysema, those who have heart disease, heart failure, cardiovascular disease, which yes, does include hypertension, people who have buildup of plaque in their blood vessels, those persons would be at high risk. Diabetics, obese individuals, those who have pre-existing autoimmune conditions such as lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, persons who have chronic kidney disease. And interestingly enough, some of those or many of those diseases that were just mentioned are also intertwined and interconnected. And so if a person has those diseases or a multitude of those diseases, it just impacts their body's ability to fight off the infection and recover from this illness should they be infected. So we're seeing that in terms of the existing medical states, which is a little bit different than why we're seeing that perhaps in certain population groups. Elderly as well. I forgot to say that. Those who smoke as well and are elderly, defined by those 65 years and above. However, mortality rates are certainly higher in the 80 to 85 year category. So I needed to add that as well.
Okay. And so since we're talking about the age, why is it that those that are 18 and younger, 18 and below, they don't seem so susceptible to this disease?
Right.
They were just, the thing about it is, the reason why I brought that up too is that, right now if you're not watching in California, and I'm not sure where the decisions have been made at the places, but, LA School District, San Diego School District have now determined that, kids aren't going back to school. So I just wanted to, talk about that age group, that school age,
right,
younger. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, that's a very interesting question. As a parent of school age children, I myself am certainly concerned about, the developments that relate to the recommendations for children to return back to school. I think in that just general discussion, I think we have to be mindful not only of the risk for children, but also the risk for those teachers and the staff members and those adults who are responsible for running the school. So it's not a clear-cut, there's no clear-cut answer, to that question, but one of the scientific reasons for why they believe that children 18 years and under are less susceptible to being overwhelmed by infection is because there's a protein in the body called ACE2. This protein is in our brain, it's in our blood vessels, it's in our heart, our lungs, which is why we see this disease impacting those particular organ systems more so. But with children, the thought is that because they have less of this protein in circulation, they're less susceptible. The value of this protein is this is the protein that's been identified to actually attach to the virus. Basically, you need an ACE2 protein in order for the virus to enter into the cell and cause infection. So if you have fewer of those proteins, the thought is in children, because they have fewer of those proteins, they're less likely to if exposed, be able to be infected or overwhelmed by this virus. Now, Children, although they are less likely to be sick and they have lower mortality rates, in fact, the mortality rate for children, both United States and globally, is about 2% in those that are 18 years younger right now. And this, I have lots of stats. I can be happy to share all of the stats with you guys, or the resources for this information, but it's about 2%. But even though the risk is lower, remember, you guys, low risk does not equate to no risk. There's a difference between no risk and low risk. So our children are still at risk, just their risk is not as great as an adult, a healthy adult, or as, one that might be considered immune compromised.
Okay, and so let's say this: someone has contracted a virus, and they are now they're over it. They survived it. I just have a friend of mine who had it, survived it, thank God, and is about to attempting to go back to work in August.
Right.
And so the question that they had was, when I take the test again, because they have to be tested, will that still, some of the residuals of it still be in my system that will cause me to test come up positive again, and or once I have it, will I get it again?
Right. Again, that's a very interesting question as well. A few things that people that we're not really talking about enough is realizing that I can get a test today, and that would only give me information up to that point in time. So it does not give me any information about what happens after I get that test. So I essentially could be tested today and perhaps walk out of the clinical setting and someone sneeze on me, cough on me, or perhaps I just happen to walk by an area unmasked where someone just coughed or sneezed unbeknownst to me, and I now could be exposed and potentially infected. So at that point, if I am on a home quarantine order or self-quarantine order, which has really been the guidance for those who are showing symptoms while they wait for test results, we're asking the community to self-quarantine up to 14 days or until you have a negative test, or at least 10 to 14 days after you are no longer showing signs of symptoms before you circulate with the general population again. But a test gives you information up to that particular point in time. In terms of whether or not someone can get infected again, the answer would be yes. And some of that depends on someone's immune system. How well was their body able to respond or build an immune response that would protect them from being overwhelmed by this virus again? There have also been studies that show that we've seen people who have tested positive again up to 2 to 3 months later. So we're not sure if this represents a very short-lived immune response to infection, or if this is just a result of a term we refer to called viral shedding, where the virus still remains in the body, but it's actually inactive and not able to cause active infection. So we're not really sure what is responsible for that, but it is very well possible that someone can carry the virus but not actually be infected. In fact, one type of test that's out there is what we refer to as a PCR test. And this particular test just tells you, it just basically detects, do you have coronavirus? Okay. It doesn't tell us if the virus is active or inactive, or infectious or not infectious. So I would add that to the discussion.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this immune system here. What are the things that people can do to build that immune system? What are the things that they can take, the vitamins? How is it that they can be as strong as possible in their immune system at this point? Things that are accessible, things that they can do in everyday life. What are those things?
Right. A lot of different things actually can be done. And I think that when you're talking about the potential to prevent or minimize the outcome should you be exposed or impacted by this virus, I think it is important to be proactive and preventative by way of trying to help boost your immunity. Again, it's not you can do all the things right, and it still doesn't mean that you can't be infected by this virus or even die potentially from this virus, because we have seen, young, seemingly healthy individuals, be affected by this virus as well. Sadly, sometimes for reasons we can't even explain. But nonetheless, I would say, of course, sleep. This is something that I'm guilty of not doing a lot of, but sleep is so very important. 7 to 9 hours is what they tell you, because when you sleep, you're actually helping your body deal with some of the mechanisms in your body that actually can damage your cells and decrease your immune support. So sleep is very, very important. Obviously, I would also say exercise. That one thing too, that can be a challenge for us, especially for a lot of us who are now stuck indoors. There are some who are not as comfortable or maybe not as well able to get outdoors in a safe environment to get that extra physical activity. But exercise, 5 days of moderate intensity activity, 3 to 5 days, if you can get it, would be fantastic. That also is immune protective. Certainly vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, things that help, give you a healthier vascular system, things that will help take away some of those chemical compounds that do really damage our bodies from the inside out at a cellular level. So vitamins such as vitamin C. I know you guys all have vitamin C in your cabinets right now. If you don't, shame on you. Get to the store and get some right now. But I would tell you probably, vitamin C about 1,000 milligrams a day. Selenium is another very good compound that is useful to help protect the cells, so that our cells are more functional and they do what they're supposed to do. So that way, again, it helps our immune defenses. Magnesium is also vital to a lot of the different metabolic changes that occur in our body. And so magnesium would be something. Vitamin D3 is also a very, very good vitamin that is helpful for immune protection, helpful to fight off infections. We see some benefit even for people who have cancer. So vitamin D3, get yourselves, 1,000 to 4,000 international units daily. That could be helpful. So vitamins, minerals, not stressing out so much. Turn the TV off. Social media.
Turn that TV off.
Yes.
Turn it off.
Too much of this discussion, too much of thinking about this virus and am I going to get it, actually can harm our immune defenses. So you want to be able to control your stress. So, take that nice bubble bath, play that nice soft music, get outdoors, get a pet if you need something to do. There's a project for you. Get a pet.
I was going to say, get rid of the pet.
I know you heard my dog in the background already. Getting a pet can be helpful. There's things that we take for granted, or we don't realize the benefit of. Sometimes just the smallest things go a long, long way to be helpful. Again, no one thing by itself is curative or preventative, but the compound effects of all of those different things can certainly be helpful. Read a good book, things that, again, just help pull your stress level down. That's what I would tell people, to consider. So we've heard all these things before, but these are some additional things that can be helpful to boost your immune system.
Now, what is elderberry?
Elderberry, again, is another supplement. I don't have a lot of experience with elderberry, but I do know that elderberry is useful, and a lot of people actually take it typically right at the beginning of cold and flu season. And it's been known to be helpful to diminish your symptoms that are caused by viral illness if you take it within usually the first 2 to 3 days of developing those symptoms. It can be useful to shorten the course of your illness. In terms of its effect as it relates to COVID-19, definitely not sure, but it's still a virus. So I would tell someone, if you have it on your cabinet and you start to get symptoms suggestive of a viral illness or COVID-19, hey, start taking your elderberry. It certainly won't hurt. But again, if you're on a lot of different medications, I would always suggest that you address that with your medical provider to make sure that you can take it safely, because minerals and supplements may not be beneficial to everyone, or there may be advisement to take it up to a certain quantity.
Okay. Well, okay, so for the audience, I'm going to do a review.
Okay.
So this is what helps. Go to bed. Get
Okay.
sleep. turn that TV off. Okay, and other than this social media program right now, and any future programs that I'm doing, turn
Right,
that social media off. Okay,
right.
go back. This is your prescription, you guys. All right, you want a prescription from a doctor? Go to bed, turn social media off except for i.e. Bridgette, the perfect party. Uh, don't get a dog. Uh, bubble bath, okay? And for the
I got to add one more. The
that's one
most
more.
important thing for this audience who's watching, I'm going to tell y'all to pray and let
Okay,
God work it out.
that's it. Now that right there is a pray, and then if that fails you, which it won't, then see the rest of it. Okay, so we know that, but we just have to give you guys a prescription for the sphere as well, and we do that as my pastor says, as he put up, is preventive, you know, being proactive and having prevention. So these are
Right.
those things that would help us. And now one of the girls asked, hi, she on here, she was asking why they put that snot, that little thing up your nose so far for the testing. Why is the swab so far up my nose, huh? Why is the swab so far up my nose?
I would say that probably has to do more with the person who's administering the test, but the thought is to get a collection of the secretions in the nose. So they're swabbing people in the nose, trying to just connect both sides to make sure they get an adequate sample to run the test so that it's accurate. So that's one of the more common ways to get tested. Obviously, if someone's in the hospital, there are other ways to be tested, but for most of us, it's a nasal swab that's being performed.
Okay, so Ty, it shouldn't go that far up your nose.
It shouldn't be, it should not be painful.
So that obviously that swabber needed to get some rest.
And training.
A bubble bath. They
Right.
did their stress. So anyway, that's one of the questions. So anyway,
Okay.
so all right. So people that are asymptomatic, can
Okay.
they affect? They can affect people
Right.
consistently. Okay, so
Yes.
someone can be contaminating someone and may not even know it, that they even have it. So, do they ever become? Is it asymptomatic and they can possibly become symptomatic, or is it just that's a part of your makeup, your genes, that you are just more asymptomatic towards this particular disease?
Well, I think some of that really has to do with the fact that, yes, there are people who can be asymptomatic and yet still be carrying the virus and can transmit the virus to other people. This is just part of how viruses work. And so the same is true if you were to have the flu. You could be infected with the flu virus, but not show symptoms as of yet. So if you're currently asymptomatic, it's possible that you can still, and in most likely will develop symptoms at some point, but those symptoms can be anywhere from mild to severe. Obviously a lot of what we're hearing about are focused more on those moderate to severe symptoms, but there are people who have a very mild presentation, and it could be something just as simple as a cough or perhaps a sore throat, or maybe they just experience more fatigue than usual. So it can show up in different ways in different people. You do not need to have all of the symptoms to have COVID-19 virus or disease. So you could have a few, or you could have many, or you could have no symptoms. What we know about viral illnesses is if you've been exposed to a virus, there's something called an incubation period. This is the time where you've been exposed to the virus, you carry the virus, and you are infectious towards other people, but you don't show symptoms yet. What we're seeing with COVID-19, anywhere between 2 to 14 days could be someone's incubation period. On average, people are starting to show symptoms around day 5, but it could be up to 2 weeks after your initial exposure before you could develop symptoms, which is also why we're telling people from the beginning of your symptoms, you still need to quarantine and stay away from others for at least another 2 weeks. So this could be the explanation for why some people are staying away, as little as 2 weeks, some people as long as 1 month. It just really depends on how they develop symptoms, if they have confirmed that they have this virus or not. So it will show up in different ways for different people. hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about this. For those of us who are in African American persuasion, I have to say it correctly. I am
Right.
African American. And how they're saying, are we more susceptible to this thing? You know, I think we've heard that. So why is it that, you know, now we're the people that are the most likely, and what is all that about? Let's explain about the African American.
Right. Sadly, a lot of what we are hearing is true in terms of, you know, African Americans as a community at large. Again, I don't want to say that this is specific to every person who is a part of this community, but at large, we are seeing disproportionate rates of infection, hospitalizations, and even deaths amongst African Americans who have COVID-19. The African American community makes up about 13% of the United States population, but we're seeing rates of infection at about 30%. Of course, there are many, many reasons that contribute to this. One of the main ones being the comorbidities or the disease conditions that many within our community have already, which makes them more immune compromised. We certainly see higher rates of diabetes, hypertension, which is a heart cardiovascular issue. We certainly see more obesity amongst the community. And so there are many of us who have multiple comorbidities or multiple disease processes which impact our capacity to fight off infection. That's one thing. We certainly know too that many of us live in multi-generational homes. We live in urban communities where the population is more dense. We are very well aware of decreased access to resources and healthcare, and being able to get the medical treatment soon enough to be able to hopefully alter the outcome of the infection amongst African Americans on a grand scale. Again, there are a lot of different reasons that contribute to this. There's no one particular reason, but what we do know is this disease, COVID-19, has really put in the face of the American population at large the gross disparities that exist that contribute to these types of numbers and statistics. And so hopefully our government, our local communities, us as individuals within our community will begin to do what we can, because there are some things that we certainly can do as a community to modify our risk. We can get that exercise going and work on these bodies. We can get that high blood pressure diagnosed so that it can be treated. We can do all that we need to do to manage our diseases. But again, the healthcare community bears a great responsibility in that as well, to make sure that we are educating people appropriately, that we are providing resources that will be helpful so that people can recognize and manage their diseases. And so there's a lot of things that we can do. Sadly, the stats are true. So this is another something to pray about for sure. But we're seeing it at disproportionate rates, I think, for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah. I was reading some of the comments, so you guys, when I lean down and squint, it's because I'm reading the comments and I refuse to put on my eye crutches. So
I'm trying to look too.
That vanity thing has to be back again. Anyway, but I was reading them, and it is connected to, you know, our diet, and you know, that's soul food. You know,
we like our comfort food.
Like our comfort foods, and now that we're in the house and cooking more, and some of us are postmating more and door dashing more,
right?
So we don't have a clue what's in our food when we get it in brown bags. You know, our pastor has commissioned us to, you know, just start cooking from home, and you know, of course, our meats and everything have things in it that we don't necessarily know either. So you just have to be wise in this time when you can really focus on it, because it used to be that our challenge was, I don't have time. Oh, I don't have time to cook. I'm going to work. I got to do this. I got to take the kids here. I got to take the kids there. And now there's really no excuse at all, because you're at home with the kids. So you know, you can do it now. This is the time when you can juice.
Right. Well, even if somebody doesn't have a lot of time right now, one of the things that, you know, I say to my patients often is, well, is there ever a good time to die? That's the first thing. And at some point, you're going to have to modify your lifestyle. And so I would much prefer that people modify their lifestyle as best as they are able to, given their circumstances and resources and such, to prevent disease, as opposed to making those modifications because now it's necessary to fight off the disease to stay alive and to avoid the complications of those diseases. So I don't think we can get away from this discussion. It is a hard discussion to have because it makes us look at ourselves in the mirror and identify the things that I need to do. Certainly, you know, in my home as a mother, I'm an influencer over my children. You know, in this health profession, I'm an influencer over other people's capacity to take care of themselves. You know, and it just goes on and on and on. So I think we have to help each other stay accountable for making better choices. You know, if I want macaroni and cheese, then maybe I should not have macaroni and cheese, cornbread, and fried chicken, you know, and maybe a lean chicken, maybe a grilled chicken in that mac and cheese, and then no bread and more green vegetables. So a little give and take, you know, with most things, it's really about moderation. You know, it's not to say you have to avoid everything. It's really more about moderation and consistency, something we all know of here, but we just really have to work harder to put into practice so that way we benefit, because we benefit when we're healthier. We live longer, we can kill the stats.
And you know, too, if you go to the hospital, it's not like they're gonna roll in grandmama's mac and cheese for you to eat. You're gonna do shit anyway. So why don't you do it by choice instead of by force?
Right.
You know, you have
Right.
to just go on and do it now. I'd rather do it myself
Yes.
than to have the hospital people just bring me something that's bland and no, you can't have salt. You're like, what?
Right.
Somebody better sneak some salt up in here. Okay, so that's that. Now let's talk about this to the point too. Let's talk about cases versus death. Okay, let's
Okay.
get some statistics here. And let me just say this. I said it at the beginning of the program. For those of you who came in late and did not get this information, I'm just doing it. You know, any information that Amber is speaking on today is coming. She has stats and she can tell you if you want to know where she got her research, where she did her research at, and you want to do some more research, you are welcome to do that. Nothing is a secret here. The whole point of this is to give information. We're not trying to sway you either way. We're just trying to get some information that has been researched, and she is in this field.
Mm.
Um, at the end of the day, you make your own decisions, you know, and whatever you decide to do is cool. So, but now I wanted to talk to her about the cases versus deaths. So let's talk some numbers here. You know, when it comes down to how many people have had it, we do know that there's a lot of testing that has taken place. And so, of course, the more testing, the more cases. But let's talk about cases versus death. So, what do you think in that area?
Well, I'll have to kind of chime in on my notes to make sure I give you guys right numbers. But what I will start off by saying is when we're talking about COVID-19 being a pandemic, we're talking about the impact and the effect of this disease globally. And obviously here, right in the United States where we live, we're more concerned about what's happening clearly, locally speaking. But I will just remind you guys that there are over 7.8 billion with the B, people in the world, okay? And in the world, of that 7.8 billion people in the world, there have been 13.1 million cases identified. And this information is as of today. This comes from Johns Hopkins University. They have what's called a COVID tracker that is online. You guys could go to it right now and you can see the numbers, a really great resource to look at what's happening globally versus in our states, all the way down to your county, your respective county. So no matter where you're watching from, you can see what's going on at a very fine level. And the information that they're given, by the way, is becoming more specific day to day. So great resource to look at. But 7.8 billion people in the world, 13.1 million global cases have been confirmed. Now, remember, just because you have the virus identified does not mean that you're going to die. It means you've just had a positive test, okay? Now, of that, 575,000 people in this world have died up to date since this pandemic began on a global scale, okay? 7.8 billion people in the world, 575,000 people have died. I don't diminish the deaths. Every life is valuable and important and impacted somebody. So every life matters in this discussion. but I just want to help put a little perspective on the numbers so we can understand the true impact of this particular scenario. Here in the United States, there are 330 million people. There have been 3.4 million people who have had positive tests. So we're talking about a 1% of the population in America has tested positive up to this point in time. Of that, 136,000 people have died from March. Actually, no, from February, where the first case was identified, up through today. That is documented. Of course, those numbers are changing every few seconds. And so I'm sure the numbers even now from this morning have changed slightly, but you guys get it. 136,000, roughly 136,000 people have died to date in America, where there are 330 million people. So right now, the mortality rate, if you were to contract this virus that causes the disease, it's roughly 4% of the people are dying. And that's you know, you don't want to see 80% of people dying from disease. You want people to get sick and recover and move on with life. But what's important to understand about this number as well is we're also saying, conversely, about 96% of the people who get infected are also recovering. So I really like that prognosis, 96% chance that I'll recover even if I become ill, as opposed to a 4% chance that I might die based on our current stats. So in the mortality rate, understanding that how this rate is being calculated has to do with the way the medical community is identifying those cases. The coronavirus cases are being, the deaths more specifically, are being captured according to the way the medical community diagnoses it. And so even if someone has not necessarily been confirmed positive through a lab test, they could also, if it is suspected or probable or no other reasonable explanation, with or without laboratory confirmation, someone can still be categorized as having COVID-19 or dying from COVID-19 based on the way that the medical community diagnoses things. So those numbers, although they're variable, they really are not specific to COVID-19 in and of itself. Some of those numbers relate to the associated complications that are actually causing death. So you may get sick, yes, you have the virus, but a lot of those deaths are coming from either complications or because of a worsening of pre-existing conditions.
Okay. So also, let's let's talk about this vaccination here. What is usually the timeline of vaccination? I mean, how long does it take? Like, for those who maybe don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just saying something is out there and now they want to develop a vaccination. Usually it takes how long before they come up and through the procedures, the protocol, the red tape, the testing, you know, all of that, to it being something that can really be given out to the masses. What is usually that timeline? What is the timeline that it takes for vaccination?
Okay. So I just realized that your last question real quickly, I didn't fully answer. So I'll go back and add to that about comparative stats. But to address this question right now on the table regarding how long it typically takes for a vaccine to be made available to the public. Typically, if there is a potential treatment or vaccination that can be used to treat an existing disease, normally the process is these treatments or vaccinations would go through clinical trials that are run by our government. And there are typically 3 phases that these vaccinations have to go through. And ordinarily, in most cases, it would take somewhere between 4 to 12 years. I've even seen vaccinations, I think it was meningitis vaccination, that took even up to 20 years before full approval was granted for wide-scale release and usage, because they're trying to determine, you know, is it safe? Will it work? Is it stable, you know, in a human body as opposed to testing in animal sources first? They also need to capture what are the potential side effects, what's happening to people's bodies who who are being exposed to these potential treatments or vaccinations. And so right now, we do know that globally speaking, there are somewhere around, I think 100 and I actually had that number written down somewhere. Oh, about 190 vaccinations, potential vaccinations that are under development right now on a global scale, and over about 268 potential treatments. This is from the Millikan Institute that are in development as we speak. So there is, I think it was last week actually, our government released a resource for people who wanted to volunteer to be a participant in these trials, if you will, for vaccination. And so there are some people who are registering for that. I don't know that I would advocate for that at this particular point because there's so much we don't even know and understand about the disease, let alone a potential treatment. And this virus has really been around just since March when it was declared a pandemic in the United States. So from March to July, in a few short months, it's, you know, you have to use your judgment when you think about the likelihood that something like this could be safe. I realize it takes these types of processes to learn and to ultimately develop vaccinations that we do use. But it's definitely a fast track movement right now to get a vaccine out there. But as of yet, there's no vaccination in America that's been released. China actually has developed a vaccine, but it's not available to anyone other than their military. But they themselves are not using it in widespread circulation because they found that the vaccine that they have released is associated with high levels of toxicity, which is actually counterproductive, you know, in the sense that it's not protecting anyone or helping anyone. So it will be interesting to see how quickly they are able to develop a vaccine. But if it typically would take 4 to 12 years to develop something, to be able to declare that it is not only safe but effective, I would be I'd have a little reservation about the safety of taking a vaccination quite so soon. But I will allow people to make their individual choices about whether that's something they want to pursue or not.
Okay.
Get a life insurance policy first, though. If you do, make sure.
Just don't be the first one in line.
Right.
Hurt them. Okay.
Right.
One of the questions too was the 4% that was that were the deaths. The 4% were majority of them were they pre-existing conditions or involved or
right. You know, as with any viral illness that impacts the lungs, you know, if you understand how the body is wired, the lungs impact the heart impacts the kidneys. And so if you have diseases that already impact these systems are already not fully functional. Okay. And so if you have these pre-existing lung conditions, heart conditions, actually brain conditions as well, we're seeing a lot of inflammation impact the brain as well. People who have chronic kidney disease and such, these persons already are higher risk for complications and death all by itself. So now you compound that, and those that are autoimmune, you know, like we talked about earlier, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, these individuals are already at higher risk of, you know, adverse events, even including death in the event they get sick or overwhelmed with any type of infection, whether it's COVID or the flu or, you know, any other type of, you know, bacterial or viral infection. So we are seeing increased mortality rates for those individuals who have chronic illness, for those who are elderly, and that does make up the majority of the deaths. Although, yes, of course, you're always going to see people who fall outside of the most common range or the most common clinical, you know, situation. And so, yes, more complications for those individuals. Are other people dying? Yes, but not nearly at the same rate as you see for those who are elderly. And again, we're seeing about a 4% mortality rate for those who contract this illness and develop severe symptoms and or complications. So if I could go back and just kind of put in perspective a few more of those numbers, can I do that now, or would you like me to wait? Okay, so the one thing that I wanted to add to those numbers when I were talking about COVID mortality rates, number of cases, number of deaths at this point, if we put that in perspective, typically in the United States, and this is CDC, straight off the CDC website, about 2.8 million people die every year, all causes, okay? About 7,800 people roughly die every day from all causes in America. Now, these numbers do not include COVID numbers. This is just general consensus. This was the information that was as of 2018. So you already see that we have high death rates daily. Now, right now, what we've seen up to this point in the pandemic, about 136,000 people have died from COVID. But in 2018, I'll use this stat because this is the most recent stat that was identified again from the CDC. Over 647,000 people die every year from heart disease or complications of heart disease. Cancer, almost 600,000 people per year die from cancer-related causes. Accidents, believe it or not, unintentional injuries are the third leading cause of death in America, and we're seeing up to 169, almost 170,000 people per year die from this. And so let me compare that to flu, because that's the thing. Flu and pneumonia kind of are overlapping in the way we capture that clinically, and also too how we're seeing the relationship to COVID and or the complications. And so even for flu, we're seeing, actually flu, we know the deaths change, the rates change every year because of the vaccination, because of the particular strain that is in circulation at that time. But 2017, there was 61,000 people who died from flu, but 45 million people were sick with the influenza virus in that year. And so right now, 45 million, yes, I said 45 million, compared to right now, there have only been 3.4 million people who've been impacted by COVID. Now, keep in mind with flu, we have the ability to vaccinate for that, which means we can prevent illness from the flu in most cases. We also have treatment for the flu, and yet you're still seeing 61,000 people in that particular year die. Again, those numbers, 38,000, 45,000, 61,000, 88,000, you'll see different numbers in any given year, again, because of the variations of flu. So just to put that into perspective, at this particular point, you're more likely to die of complications from heart disease, cancer, unintentional injuries as you are to COVID-19 at this particular point in time. Only time will tell how this thing plays out, but as of right now, that's where the stats lie.
Okay. Okay, so we have just trying to look if there's any other questions. So even as I'm talking to you guys, if for any reason you have a question, you thought about it, or maybe I covered it, we covered it, you can always just throw it in there. And if for any reason this show is over and you think about some, oh wow, I should have asked this, or I should have asked that, you are welcome to inbox me or inbox Amber and get your questions answered. And if you need the stats, or if you need a website or something like that you wanted to do some additional research, or you have something that you're like, no, that's compared to this and compared to that. And listen, like I said, put the disclaimer out there that whatever you decide in your decision of your life, amen, is what? Amen? Your
Amen.
amen? Amen.
Amen.
So I just don't, I don't want that to be what we're doing here. But if you have any questions and you just want to get some answers or run something by her, you are welcome to put those questions in, and we will get them. Even if this show is over, we will get that answer to you, we promise. Now, I'd like to segue over, because not only is Amber a physician assistant and all this knowledge in the medical field that she's done in her research, but she's also I'm saying she's co-pastor, and she will screw this to get that pastor title, but her husband, Pastor Alex Singletary, is the pastor of Wyndham Spirit Church in Riverside. And so I'd like to kind of, as this is a purpose party, I do always want to include the Word of God in this particular program, because that is the foundation of it, and purpose. People who are walking in their purpose. And we know that the medical field is her vocation, but also she is a Christian first, a woman of God first. And so what I wanted to ask you, because I do know that we've got some things going on obviously in California where we're having some concerns, or just some things communicated regarding church and worshiping and all of that. And I just I would be remiss of me to not talk to you about what you believe God is doing right now, even in the world when it comes to your ministry, you know, your call on your life as a woman of God? What have you seen in either your church or just in the Christian community? I feel like there's a lot of fear. What do you do, and what do you say to those that come to you and they say, you know what, Pastor, I'm afraid. So how do you communicate to them? What do you say to them? And what would you say to those that are watching to kind of ease them? Because this is what is the disease of the disease. Well, that whole being diseased,
Right.
disease. So let's talk about the real medicine from the ultimate physician.
Right. Well, definitely being in the position that I am in at this point with the church definitely gives me the opportunity to be an influence and a support system for people who are wrestling with this. You know, if I'm honest, and I have shared this with members of my own church. Hi, Win family. um, I I myself struggled initially, because it's always the lifelong struggle, even in the life of a believer, someone who follows Christ, is, wrestling with your flesh versus, the spirit, and what the word, how we are to live by the spirit, and how we are to use God's word to live. If I relied on my own understanding, I would be messed up, because in the natural, I don't have the capacity to change my circumstances. And that's really the reality of it. And so, how do I increase my faith? How do I know that God has the ability to keep me in the midst of a season like this, where there is so much uncertainty, which is generating a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear? And as I would tell anybody, I go to the word of God to find my strength and my peace, because God has promised to keep us. He said he would give us peace in the midst of a storm. He said he would give us peace that goes beyond even what I can understand or what makes sense to me. But he told me, don't fear, because he's with me. And when God is with us, we know, church, y'all know, if God is for you, then who or what can be against you? But God has, he's told us specifically not to be afraid, to come to him, to get close to him, to learn from him. And we do that in his word. So that way we could stand. And we also trust his word. Psalms 91, that's kind of the passage that has been really anchoring and keeping a lot of the family of God in this season, really, where God is just saying, if we make him our refuge, if we keep him close and make him our habitation, that no evil is going to come upon us, and no plague is going to come near our dwelling place, where we live, where we are. And he gives his angels the ability to keep watch over us in all that we do. And so I don't say that to say that. I say it because I believe it and I know it to be true. I work right in the line of fire, and there are many days that I have to do this job and I don't have the appropriate protective equipment. And yet, some way, somehow, I'm still standing. Thank God I've not brought this home. But even if I were to be sick, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to trust God always, because nothing can take us out of this world short of the appointment date that God has authorized. And so, whether it's COVID or anything else, I'm not going anywhere until God says so. So I'm not going to walk in fear, because that's something that the enemy would like us to do. I do believe there are powers at play out there that are contributing and promoting fear, so that people are crippled and more agreeable to certain things that they might not otherwise be agreeable to. But I just tell people I have to stand on the word of God to find my peace, to find my comfort. And God has been keeping us every day, y'all, from things that we are aware of and things we're not aware of. And so because this virus has a name, this disease has a name, now suddenly I'm more afraid. Well, I've chosen at this point to no longer be afraid. I had my moments like everybody else, but I had to work it out like everybody else. And God and I, we had more than a few discussions about it, and it's his word that has brought me back to that place of peace. And so I can sleep at night. I do limit how much exposure I give myself to this content, because it can become overwhelming, and I don't want to be led by fear, but I want to be led by the Spirit of God, and I want to trust him and take him at his word, because it's worked for me, y'all, my whole life. And I don't expect that it will fail me now. So I thank God for being in position to influence and encourage people and pray with people to help them find a measure of peace, even in an uncertain time.
Well, and that is the medicine that supersedes everything we just talked about. Because
Right.
if you have that medication, the word of God, your faith, God's word to cover you, then everybody else is practicing medicine, but God is the ultimate physician. Okay.
That's right.
And we pray all the time and say that, God has kept me from danger seen and unseen. And so, as you said, this one has a name, but you have no clue of the diseases that have passed by you, and I mean passed by and didn't stop, that had no name. And God said, no, 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 not this one. She or he has something to do with this world that I've called them to do, and they will fulfill the purpose and the call of their lives. Amen.
Amen. There's a
Amen.
greater name than even COVID-19, and that's Jesus Christ.
Okay, so if you know Jesus, you got the cure. Amen. So I want to thank you so much. Listen, you are not only doing this medicine thing, but you got something else going on. What is this PA snitch? What's that? What is that? Let's talk to
So
the
glad
people.
that you asked.
Yeah.
I would love to take advantage for, I won't call it a shameless plug, but I am going to plug it. Y'all
What
see
is?
that? That's
Okay.
called the PA Snitch. This is a consulting business that I have that's actually been recently launched, during this season of slow down, although I don't really know that my life has ever slowed down, but I've been gratefully in a position to assist people who are interested in my profession as a physician assistant or a PA. And for many, many years throughout my entire career, over the last 20 years, I've been able to help people understand what this profession is all about, how to gain access to it, how to be great at it, how to get prepared for it, because it's real. I may not wear a doctor's title, but I am still empowered and licensed to provide medical care for people. And so we want to be great at anything that we do. And so God just said, he told me this actually several years ago, and I've been sitting on it for years because, that thing about time and sleep and, all the other things that get in the way. I hadn't had a lot of time to develop it. And so in this season, God said, now's the time. So I have worked very, very hard with one of my partners to formalize what we've been doing in such a way to help other people. So I'm very grateful that God said that. It's a consultant business. And so we're helping people who are pre-PA, undergraduate, in PA school, those who are new to the PA profession, everything from how do you interview and get prepared for that, how to fill out those applications, what college major you should undertake if you're interested in this type of profession. And so we're giving you the inside scoop. So come and see us at thepasnitch.com. Thank you.
And listen, that's great because listen, I'm telling you that people sometimes, because this is called the Purpose Party, and it's my job and my duty of this particular show to encourage you and empower you and motivate you to get back to purpose. God knows what's going on. He knew what was happening right now. He did not give you the approval to stop your purpose, to stop dreaming, to pause. Matter of fact, he's going to give you even more things, witty inventions right now in this season. You do it, he'll bless it. So I would tell you guys to go back to sleep, as she said, and dream some more dreams. Okay? Because God is blessing people in this season, and I know the enemy has some people just distracted. But if he promised it to you, he will fulfill it, no matter what. He didn't say, but unless there's COVID, unless you got quarantine. There's no unless in his purpose and call. So as Amber is doing everything, let's all die empty with all these gifts and talents that we have. And it's okay. And if you've been waiting for somebody I need somebody to just tell me it's okay. Well, it's okay. Do it. Okay. Because I too have some things that'll be coming out the box that is like, girl, just do that. Okay. Will you just stop and do that? Because the thing that's going to make you even more mad than this COVID is watching somebody fulfill your dream that God gave to you to do, and you sat on it, and you're going to end up paying for it because you're going to have to purchase the thing you were supposed to do. All right. Well, that's enough of me preaching. All right, Amber, thank you so much. You are so smart, and you are beautiful, and you are my niece. I want to thank you guys for watching the show, and listen, stay tuned because my next show, I believe, is going to be on Sunday, the 19th, this coming Sunday. It's at 3 o'clock. It is a pastor's panel that I'm putting together. The show is called Men, Math, and Ministry. So Men, Math, and Ministry. Powerful. I got some great pastors on this panel, and we're going to be talking about some things that's happening currently, and I want you guys to tune in. But until then, as I say all the time, when it comes to your purpose, if not now,
When?
bye. I love you.
Thank you.
Get out of here. Uh-oh, I got to get out.
I'll try to respond to some questions.